Hey folks, Chris McLean back with yet another episode. And today in the studio, I've got Hasani from Lead Your Story. They're the only agency in the world that combines powerful storytelling with the synergistic. I'm going to kick that off again because that didn't roll very well.
No worries.
Hey there folks, Chris McLean back with yet another episode, and in the studio today I've got Hasani from Lead Your Story. And if you're looking to powerfully communicate your story that inspires people, inspires your audience, Lead Your Story is the only agency in the world that synergizes business communication for building brand, leadership and culture all in one. Hasani, excited to get into all things culture, leadership, storytelling. So thank you so much for swinging by the show.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. I definitely appreciate being here.
So let's go straight into the meat of this. Why is story important? Why do I want to use storytelling? Why is that important to me as a business owner, as a brand? Why is story so important?
Yeah, well, we can dive into this from so many facets, but long story short, our brains are hardwired for story. There's nothing that grabs us emotionally like being pushed into, and I mean literally pushed into a story, because when you're pushed into it, it's almost like something is like pulling you in and you can't escape. And that's why when we hear a story coming off the lips of a close friend or even a brand or even on the big screen or in between a book, we are hardwired to want it. And just real quick, evolutionarily speaking, it makes sense, because as we evolved as a species and we found a way to survive, it was important for us to get the 411 or the information on where all the pitfalls and dangers were in life. So your fellow brother or sister or whoever comes to you and says, hey, this is what I experienced over here, and you won't guess what happened. Tell me. The brain goes, wait a minute, there's danger I need to avoid, listen, and then this happened and that happened and I was able to do this. Really? So you just gave me the blueprint to succeed. We're the only species on the planet that can use the power of story, meaning information and narrative that comes before us, to understand the landscape and where we are in life so that we can build on it and grow from it. And that is why story is so powerfully connected to us. We're quite literally hardwired to want, need, and gravitate towards story. The geeky side of it is that there's all types of hormones that are released: oxytocin, cortisol. We have neural neurons, all types of geeky stuff that we could talk about for hours. But long story short, we can't resist a great story.
Yeah, I love that. There's a biological underpinning to this stuff, and the geeky stuff is super cool to get into, because it's always understanding the underlying biology of something, right? It can give us the way to kind of deconstruct it, to decode it, to understand it. But as you said, we're also hardwired to naturally understand metaphor and understand, theoretical, hypothetical things that are told through story. And as you said correctly, that's how traditions were passed down, how cultures were built, how information was shared. It was through, exactly like I said, hey, I went down by the stream and a wolf jumped out, don't go down there. Right?
Yeah.
So what is that underpinning? What is it about story, whether you sort of take it down the geeky side or sort of the theoretical side, how are we hardwired to take metaphor and things like that and create meaning from that?
Well, beyond all the things that happen neurochemically for us when we're engaging in story, we're also having two sides of the equation playing out. One is the logical underpinning of, okay, A plus B plus C equals D. Like we start to see the logical steps to a thing. But we all know that logic or facts don't move us, right? If we move purely based upon logic, human life would be totally different. So while facts, functions, and features of a thing are important, human life often is moved forward through another F called feeling. So stories allow us to connect emotionally to these very dull and bland things. So from a business perspective, when we think about it, a lot of businesses out there, and we're dealing with agencies here, we understand this, they're trading on facts, functions, and features, right? We're the best product. Here's the price. Here's the functions. Here's the features. And we're yelling into the marketplace around these 3 F's. But brands do something different. We connect through feelings and stories by virtue of them having a very humanistic emotional element connect us to that essential human thing called feeling. And that's why brands don't have to be the best product. They don't have to have the best widget, the best price, or be the best functionally. They have a feeling that story and brand imbues upon us. And when we consume it, we're like, this is better, not functionally, but because of how it makes us feel. So story is that shortcut, that way to imbue feeling upon this very inanimate thing, this thing that doesn't have any feeling or emotion tied to it. But if we think about, say, an Apple product versus, say, a Microsoft product, there's a totally different feeling that comes by way of engaging in either one of those brands. And as a result of the feeling we get from Apple, not its function, not its facts about it, not the features, we would trade at a premium for an Apple product. And that's the distinction. And that's why story is so important from a business perspective, because it allows us to imbue feeling to something that quite literally is the same as anything else out there, at least functionally speaking.
So how do I, as a business owner, as a brand, if I want to become a better communicator in my marketplace, is that incumbent upon me to write my story? Because there's a sort of this dichotomy between brand, right? Do I create my brand, or is brand the way the market interprets me and my brand? So what is that distinction, and can I lead that, or do I put something out there and then whatever happens? How do we start to take control and make sure that we're communicating the right essence and the right feeling from our brand?
Yeah, that's a key distinction. I think there are 2 schools of thought, and I'll tell you where I land on that. One is you pay attention to the marketplace and you intercept the narrative that already exists, and then you find a way to communicate more deeply around that narrative. So that's not in the idea of creating, it's more along the way of aligning with market sentiment. You can come into a well-established market and just find a way to more deeply emotionally connect, because the products and services just aren't connecting. They're speaking at the market. They're not speaking with the market. They don't understand and empathize and connect in a deep emotional way. And you just find a way to do that better. So you're not creating a story, you're aligning your story. But then there's another school of thought where you say, okay, how do I find a way to authentically move from the heartbeat and pulse of who we are, right, as a core brand? And then how do we start to build products and services around this ethic, this idea of who we are? I lean more towards this side of the equation, because our agency, like you said at the top of the show, is a bit unique in the sense that we help companies to find their authentic, true brand voice through their leadership. Who are we? What do we exist? What do we value? And then how do we help them to project that story internally to build culture and leadership and camaraderie? Then how do we also communicate that same brand story externally to help people in the marketplace to better connect with who you are as a brand? And I'll give you an example from one of my lawyer clients, runs a big firm, and he's a lawyer because when he was, I believe, 8 years old, his family was evicted, or his mom was evicted, got foreclosed on, lost the house. They were homeless for a stint. He went into foster care. It was just a rough 5 years of his life. And he swore that when he got older, that no one that he loved would ever be taken advantage of again. So that's his story. That's his ethic. That's his culture. So as a founder, when he shares that story of like, I will fight harder for you than anybody else, he wins big deals. Not because he went to Harvard, not because he's able to win. Remember, we talked about it, facts, functions, and features. Everyone says they're the best lawyer. Everyone says they have the best product. Everyone says they can win for you. But they choose him because of that story. Well, how do you imbue that brand story internally? Well, he goes to all of his staff, his partners, and he asks, okay, when was it sometime in your life when someone took advantage of you and came after your money, your livelihood, your reputation? How did you feel? Tell me that story. Everyone inside of the organization has that story when somebody was trying to take advantage of them, they said, hell no, we're going to fight. So now he has an army of people who believe in the essence of what this brand stands for. So now not only does their culture and what they stand for internally say this is who we are, but they're able to also market that forward. When they're on the phones, every touch point with the client, there is story synergy because everyone understands we are the pit bulls who fight for our clients to hell with anybody coming after their money, their livelihood, or their reputation. We're going to fight for them. And that, my friends, or is the side that I lean on. Build a story around who you are authentically and what you do naturally. And you'll be able to not only project the market presence, but you're able to live it internally, which creates a deeper story synergy and I think more relevance long-term and sustainability for the brand.
Amazing. I love that. That's an amazing story of how, as a leader, he was able to, number one, tap in and really understand his story and his rationale, his reason for being, his why, but then also take that and use that as a mechanism to tap into and connect to all of his staff and team to draw that out of them as well, so that they have their own story, but that is connected to his story. And then that creates a really nice synergy for the brand. It's the same story told through different lenses. I really love that approach. So if I want to start doing something like that, finding my why, finding my purpose, finding my passion, these are big topics, right? And this is, everybody wants to find their passion, understand their vision, know their big why. We're told we need to do this and know this. For some people, maybe like your lawyer client, they started the business because they had that thing, that drive, that fire from something in their life. But a lot of agency owners, a lot of business owners create businesses and kind of get down the line and then go, actually, why am I doing this?
No doubt.
They start it for financial reasons, or they just see that this is a good business opportunity, and they get down the line and they maybe don't have that why. They haven't understood, why have I created this business? What does this mean to me? So for that type of person, how do they start to tease that out? Is there a process where I can sit down and start to tease out, what is this? What is my drive? What is the thing that lights my fire about this business? Or is this the business and the brand that I wanted it to be? How do I go through that? How do I start to tease that out?
I mean, that's a great question, Chris. Sometimes it just hits you in the face. This is why I do what I do when it's playing, and you're lucky enough to understand that and you're able to communicate that and it makes sense. But for 90% of us, we're going to have to do the work of not trying to find a story that tells the market why we're the best. No one cares about why we're the best. The oxymoron around story is the idea that a story tries to position you as a storyteller as a hero. It's not about you. What someone wants to know is that through you, they can become a hero. So from that perspective, it's not about your why or your passion. No one cares or gives a shit about your why or your passion, right? It's about why you do what you do and how that makes you a worthy guide in someone else's life. So going back to the lawyer's story, it's not about him being evicted. It's about the fact that he has a hellified reason as to why he's going to fight for you and to help you to be the hero in your story. So from that perspective, it gives us great latitude to find something emotionally compelling that makes us a good guide in someone's life, not because of our expertise, but because of our experience. There is something that Chris went through, overcame, challenged, fought, that makes you a worthy guide in the next person's life. That's the story you tell. But so many of us want to tell a story of when we were the hero, and that misses the whole point of storytelling. The story needs to help our audience to see how they can be the hero in their own story. And that's the key. What have you been through? Not your expertise, but experience that makes you a worthy guide, a trustworthy guide in the lives of those you seek to connect with in the marketplace.
I love that. That's a really nice distinction between expertise and experience. So a lot of businesses and brands are out there trying to become authority and show expertise and show skill sets and traits and the stuff that they do, rather than having that vulnerability almost, I guess, to talk about experience and talk about, well, look, here's some shit I went through in my life, and that's why I started this thing, and because of that, I've got a fire in my belly to build your business, right? That's more the way you want to operate. Yeah.
My real quick, I share a story with people all the time about when I closed my first figure deal, and it really started to make sense for me. Because as an agency owner, we all say we have the expertise to make something happen. When we get to the proposal, we're saying, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to make it happen. And when invariably, we've all been there. We need to close this deal. And the person on the other side is like, they start really second guessing. And all of a sudden you're getting this resistance. And you're like, oh my God, I'm not going to close this. Well, one time I shared this story, this was years ago, and I was like, I will never, ever not be in a position to share a great story when I'm trying to close a deal. And the story was simply about my life as a professional fighter. My brother had passed away, and I swore I would fight every fear I had from that point on. And I was scared of physical confrontation. So I became a professional mixed martial artist in 2004, got into a cage. It was the scariest time in my life, Chris. I couldn't sleep 3 weeks leading up to the fight. It was back then, it was illegal on most places. So we fought on Native American reservations. And the dude that I was walking to the cage, I was nervous. I was scared. There was blood on the mat when the cage door opened. I was like, oh my God, why am I here? What am I doing? And then the bell rang, and, the guy was screaming, I'm going to kill you, all this other stuff. But when that bell rang, Chris, I found something that I didn't know I had. And, we were fighting, and I was, I went down middle of the round, and I was in my corner. I was more tired than ever been in my life. And I remember my coach telling me something. He said, hey, X, remember what you're fighting for. It was just a whisper. Remember what you're fighting for. And I thought about my wife, my kids, my brother, and all the things that are important to me. And I was able to fight through that moment, through that fear. And I was able to overcome and knock him out late in the first round. And I turned to my prospect telling her that story. And I said, I know what I'm fighting for, but do you? She signed immediately. It wasn't about my expertise. It wasn't about all the promises I made. It wasn't about stuff I said I can do. It wasn't about my Ivy League degree. It wasn't about any of that. She trusted that I was going to be a worthy guide and support in her story, in her path to being a hero. And that's the key. That's the thing I want you to remember when you're trying to tell a story, especially as an agency. The skepticism around us being able to do what we can do is at an all-time high, because everyone is yelling, I'm the best and I can make it happen. But it's your stories that emotionally connect you and showcase why you do what you do that can really separate you in the marketplace and get people to say, I choose you. And that's what we want.
Yeah, amazing stuff. So that's such a compelling story. I would have signed too, I think, if I was in the room with you, understanding how tough that would be to step into the cage and literally face that fear, face your own mortality, in that cage environment, actually be able to literally fight through that and find that will, that fortitude inside of yourself to come through that moment. That's something that you obviously have carried through the rest of your life and into your business. Right. And that is, how does that look for other people? If I haven't been in a cage fight, if I haven't, maybe I've had a pretty easy life and I started my agency just because I wanted to have a business. I mean, we've all got a story, right? We've all, surely there's something. It doesn't have to be necessarily, look, I stepped into a cage and I got pummeled and then I found myself and I fought through. What kind, from your perspective, what kinds of things, if you had to characterize the emotion, the feeling, is it purely just something that I went through and it doesn't really matter what it is as long as I can emotionally resonate with that thing and make it align to what my business is offering? Is that the essence of this?
Yeah. Fireworks are nice, but not necessary. And I think a lot of us judge ourselves and our story through that. I haven't been in a cage, or I haven't made millions of dollars. Who am I? Well, the problem or the challenge is you're with yourself 24/7, 365. So your stories and your experience are plain Jane vanilla. And we look outside of ourselves and somebody has Chunky Monkey and Cherry Garcia with chunks and gobs of all this other stuff in it. But I want to challenge you to step back from it and not judge yourself so critically, and just ask the key question. What did I go through or overcome that makes me proud? Or what did I go through or overcome that speaks to who I am and what I believe? The thing that a great story has, whether we're telling your founder story, we work on 3 stories for organizations: your customer story, your founder story, and your mission story. And they're all 3 different takes on the same kind of aspect of showing a hero's journey. But when it comes to your founder story, the only thing that you need to really focus on is that there is a moment of pain, doubt, worry, fear, where you had to overcome. So I have clients who talk about, overcoming the dark or being why they do what they do. I got clients who talk about fear of clowns. But like you said, it doesn't matter what it is as long as you can build a bridge back to what it is that you do. And that's where creativity comes into play, or having someone who isn't so close to it and judging it to say, oh, that sounds good. You should, run with that one. So doing this in a group and giving yourself some space to not be so judgmental, you'll find your story, or just, hire an expert facilitator to walk you through it. We all have a great story to share, but we're too busy judging it to see it.
Yeah, that's so true. It's literally not being able to see the wood for the trees, right? We're in it. We are the hero within our own stories without realizing it. And I really like that analogy. We a lot of the times we do see ourselves as kind of vanilla. We look at Instagram, we look at all this amazing stuff, go, well, I don't have what they've got. They've got this amazing thing. But having that facilitation, having somebody external to sit there, actually, tell me that story about that time when you were a kid and you went through something, right?
Right.
That can be enough, right?
And sometimes it doesn't even have to be there. I have clients who are just the most humorous people in the world, and we get into working on their story, and they're like, X, I haven't been through anything serious in my entire life. So then we say, okay, well, how do you think about this? He was like, I haven't been through none of that shit. But maybe that's why I'm the best for you, because I don't have anything to overcome. I'm just going to work for you. So one of the stories we worked on is a client talking about all these other people who did crazy, wonderful stuff. And he said, honestly, I'm not none of those guys. I'm the most boring person in the room, and all I have is you. All I have is you. You can count on me 24/7. You call me at 3:33 in the morning, and I'm going to answer and say, what do you need? And he gets his clients to laugh. And it's just that level of raw, honest transparency about who you are and what you've been through. And if it isn't fireworks, don't try to fake it. Find the thing that deeply connects you to other people, and they go, I like him. I like her. I trust her. That's the key to create TLC: trust, likability, and connection. Those 3 TLC. If you can create TLC, you're far more likely to be chosen above and beyond your expertise.
Yeah, it's so important. Most people buy us, right? They buy the person, they buy the human behind the business. He said, rather than the stuff or the mechanics or the delivery or the services. That's kind of all the same. If you look at digital marketing or SEO or social media management, the service is the same. I'm going to buy you because you make me laugh or you make me feel something. So I think that's super important thing to come back to, is they're going to buy you. They're not necessarily the product, the service, the delivery, that has to be there. That has to support.
Yeah.
Right? But the big promise is they're buying me. They're buying the essence of myself, and working this stuff out and finding these things is super important to that part of the process of getting chosen because of who you are, and not kind of being this faceless, emotionless front to just a business and stuff and mechanism.
And I put this into two camps in the marketplace. There are going to be two winners going forward. And this is already showing itself. You're going to have the camp of big businesses who can trade at scale. They have the best products or the best functionality at the best prices, and they can trade at scale. Think Amazon of the world. Very difficult, if at all, to compete. On the other end of the spectrum, we have brands who don't trade on product and price, but they trade on purpose and passion, feelings. It's not facts, functions, and features, it's feelings. And we will give our money and support to these brands, not at scale, but definitely at a premium to those who can get us to feel. If you're treading in the middle, you're being eradicated, decimated. You're just treading water, barely surviving, stuck in the middle where the greater majority of us reside. It's very difficult to find economies of scale like an Amazon and to grow that. But the thing that we all have at least a shot at is building brand. Brand is the thing that insulates you, separates you, and makes you more likely to be chosen. If you are just a business, just an agency, just another person who does social media marketing, it's going to be very difficult for you going forward because these big businesses are cannibalizing those services through automation, mechanization, processes, and systems that scale. But those who have brand, they're weathering that storm. They're thriving in this marketplace. So the mecca for us is brand, and brand is accessible through our stories.
Yeah, powerful. And I really love the way that you're not just looking at that from an external perspective, but bringing that back into internal culture, because that is something that is super interesting right now, because we have fragmented workplaces. We've got teams distributed around the world and working remotely. Maintaining that brand and that brand identity internally as a culture in a business is more difficult than ever. So how do you approach that aspect of it? How do I start to bake that into my internal culture?
Well, let me piggyback on that before we get into the how to. It's not only difficult to do, it's becoming, it was something that separated the cream from the crop in yesteryear. But now it's essential because the marketplace is not only buying products and services around, the product and how functional it is and how it makes us feel. They're buying products based upon what that brand stands for internally. Like if your people hate you and don't want to show up to work, and then they're going online speaking about that, that is messing up your brand name and then taking away from sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's essential to stand for something and to be congruent inside out, because eventually you will be found out. You can't say we're all about this and not live it, because someone with the camera somewhere is going to hold it up and show the light of day that you are a fake and a phony. And all these brands are having to apologize, pivot, and they're losing market share because this younger generation, they care about where they spend their dollars. They care about where they work. They'd rather be poor and have nothing than to go work for somebody or some entity that doesn't stand for something. So it's critically important to take care of internal communications around what you stand for in your culture. Now, as it gets to the how, that's part of our process. We have this living leadership. Before I founded the Leader Story, I ran a leadership company called Rise of a Leader. And before that, I was a marketer with a company called 4E Consulting. And somewhere along the line, when I pivoted after my brother's death and my cage experience fighting and stuff and founding a leadership company in personal development, I found that the two things that I leaned on most in building businesses and building people was story. If I could get the marketplace to believe in a brand and what it's about and its value and its connective piece, it will distinguish itself. If I can get leaders to share their stories and to build a culture and ethic around these things that we believe in, there was a strong culture. And it dawned on me that if you could do both, you would have story synergy. And so we work to find that voice, that ethic, and get leaders to share what they're about, what they value, why they're there. We get the teams to do the same thing. And we start to create that synergy around what it is that we truly stand for. And everybody has stories that are organizationally based, personally based, and that connect them to their work beyond the paycheck. And then we start communicating that externally, creating an army of storytellers. employee generated content and user generated content is 22 times more likely to be believed, engaged, and convert than just branded content. And this is the new kind of frontier of content, because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when content was in its early days, you could put out stuff and people were enamored by it. But what about now? It's everywhere. It's noise. So we have blinders on. Marketers ruin everything. You know the whole saying, right? Yeah. So now we're distrustful of messages that come directly from brands. But when people share it, we go, oh, we trust people far more. And that's the next frontier for building brand, is to engage your people to become your frontline storytellers. And that's part of what we do at Lead Your Story.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So take us through, what does that look like? What's that process of, I want to get this stuff in, I want to be a better leader, I want to learn, I want to tap into my story, I want to proliferate that through my culture. What does that look like as a process? I say, Hasani, help me out. I need to get going with this stuff. What does that look like if I come and work with you and start? Is it workshops? Is it interactive? Is it coaching? How does that look?
Yeah, it's all of the above. There's no one size fits all model, whether it's virtual or we're doing group trainings or we're working on the mission and collective story for your organization. And we're always asking the question before we jump into any engagement: what will be the best and most efficient way to facilitate the sharing and communication of stories that connect us to our core customers? And sometimes that is just having what we call the story day, where we get 30 people in a room and we just have a very emotionally driven experience around our stories and what it means to work at this place. And through that experience, create not only camaraderie, but to re-engage around the things that matter in driving the organization forward. And then we create kind of opportunities for those team members to share their stories. We might leave a camera and a project in the office space where people can start to document what they're feeling and what they're going through, and et cetera, et cetera. Then they send that to us to cut and chop up to turn into not only promotional material internally, but also externally. So it could be as broad as that to us finding a way to work with just one leader in the organization and helping her or him define the essence of their story to communicate to the thousands of people who work with them so that they can truly understand where they're coming from. And then allowing that to start the genesis of building something new or something different, a new project initiative, a new kickoff, a new direction, a new CEO coming in. So it's not a one size fits all approach, but at the end of the day, it all starts with finding what we call the unifying brand story, the UBS. When we find that unifying brand story, how do we now communicate that to all of the shareholders, employees, staff, vendors, externally, and what strategies can we put into place to make that as efficient as possible?
Love it. Love it. Amazing process. And like you said, this is like having a website, right? This is no longer a nice to have. We're seeing a massive, just the last 18 months, we're seeing a bolstering of your Walmarts and your Kmarts and your big top end brands, and an erosion of the entire middle part of the market, right? So this stuff, as you said, this is the stuff that's going to differentiate you from, hey, here's my widget and here's the same widget over here for half the price, versus here's my brand and nobody can compete on that because nobody is me and no one can tell my story.
Yeah. And I think that's the opportunity there. It's also the scary side, because if we don't find a way to really connect to the essence of our brand voice, we can truly lose ground in the marketplace to these bigger businesses, those who are building brand. And increasingly, it's kind of a winner takes all kind of marketplace. So whatever niche you choose, if you're not at the top of the top, it's becoming increasingly harder, at least in my experience, to survive. It's not that the resources are declining; they're just going to a select lower number of people in organizations. The pie is actually growing. It's just going to select people who are either big or have brands. So I'm yelling at people right now, dude. whatever you're doing, build brand, connect to people emotionally so that they continue to choose you. And that's the place that you know, in my mission to impact 100 billion people's lives through the power of story, I tell people no matter who you are, where you are, you have a shot if you get good at communicating your story and what you're about.
Love it. Love it. If people want to come and find out more about you, there's a couple of places up on screen, but for those listening at home, where are the best places for people to come and find you, connect with you, learn more about how to listen and start telling their story in a better way?
Yeah, I would invite you to go to our company website, Lead Your Story, or my personal website, Hasani X. But if you really want to learn our process for helping to build brand and culture, we actually have a free story course at launchmystory.com. That's launchmystory.com, where we go over our UBS, the unifying brand story, with worksheets and free videos, and help you to really blueprint all of that out. It's the same exact stuff we do with our clients who pay us tens of thousands of dollars to help them with that. So it's free, and you'll be joining our insider resource network, where we send out tips on story and communication every week. And that's at launchmystory.com.
Amazing. I'll make sure to drop that in the show notes so the folks at home can smash that link and go check that out. Sounds like an amazingly valuable resource. Thank you so much, Hasani, for your time. It's been deeply insightful. As you said, this stuff is more and more important, and it makes us human, right? It makes we're not just doing stuff. We're not just doing business. We're able to bring ourselves into our businesses. And personally, I think that's one of the most powerful things we can do, is to have our business be a full reflection and representation of who we are, what we stand for, why we exist. That is a sustainable business. That's something that I can run for the long haul, because I'm literally invested in it, and I get to bring the clients that I want to work with, the team that I want to work with, because they're resonating with my energy and my vibe, and that's how I build my tribe. So yeah, this stuff's incredibly, incredibly valuable, and yeah, I really appreciate you dropping all the knowledge on us today and swinging by.
Thank you for having me. Definitely. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, mate. Thank you for tuning in at home. Thanks, Hasani, for being here. Please go click the links in the description here and go connect and find out more about this stuff and how to get it done in your business, because massive, massive in the world we're operating in now, and the future world we're going to be moving into. As Hasani's saying, this stuff's not nice to have anymore. This is mandatory to keep your business functioning and sustainable. So yeah, thank you so much for dropping by, Hasani. We'll catch you everyone on the next episode. Cheers.
Take care.